if you learn color, to learn from somebody who loves it and understands it. And they didn't even make me take color in college. They said, you got it, you don't need this class. But I have learned considerable things from my mentors and that I can pass on to you.
So this is a Meet the Mentor for Ellen Jean Diedrich, and we are welcoming her to Mastrius. She's going to be starting a mentorship on the 4th Sundays of the month from 1 to 3, starting on January 22nd. I'm just going to give a brief introduction. Ellen Jean Diedrich, with studios in Rancho Mirage, California, and Fargo, North Dakota, is a national award-winning painter creating neo-impressionistic paintings, working primarily in watercolor and acrylic. Ellen's rural and city backgrounds play a significant role in her choices of subject matters. She particularly enjoys painting landscapes, flowers, architecture, and domesticated animals. Proud of her Midwest heritage, Diederich brings sincerity and love to each painting. Having earned a BA in art education and a BFA in fine art, Ellen is an honored alumnus of Minnesota State University, Moorhead. She's been painting professionally since 1985, has exhibited widely, and was featured in Fargo at the Plein Air Museum and Underbrush Gallery, the Rourke Art Museum in Moorhead, the Capitol Gallery in Bismarck, and Gene Stephen Galleries in Minneapolis, and many more in the Dakotas and Minnesota. Ellen is the author and illustrator of 2 award-winning children's books and her art book, Progressive Painting, Your Creative Journey, as well as a workshop instructor and a juror. And as I mentioned, her group will be starting on January 22nd, running from 1 to 3, and it will be on the 4th Sunday of the month. So one of the things that we wanted to do first is I'm going to share my screen, and Ellen is going to just give us a brief introduction and talk about her paintings. Let me just see if I can get my screen share back up.
Yeah. And Karen is the navigator for this group, and I'm really pleased to have her. She's very good at this.
Oh, thank you. Here you are. You see you?
I see the picture of me, yes.
There you go.
Bottom. Okay. So this is a painting acrylic on watercolor paper, and I employed stamping in this painting, and I made that big shape of water and sky, and I cut out a stamp, and I went from back and forth into the braids of the kids and the clothing and the t-shirts, and it kind of gave an atmospheric look to the water, like when you see the water haze. It's a very delightful piece.
So what did you create the stamps with?
I used great question. My brain just went away from that. I use these cutout rubber sheets that I'll teach them about doing that, where you draw a design and you cut out with a razor blade. And then yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things we can learn about in your mentorship.
Yeah, it's very fun. This is a piece with a grid of downtown Fargo, where I'm from. It kind of set off my whole career, my card making business, everything. I used some watercolor pencil on this, but I put the grid in and then I paint over like it's not there. And you can do this in watercolor or acrylic in my class.
Okay, and we'll talk more about the grids a little later.
Enjoying the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when new Mastrius videos are added.
This one is a nice watercolor where you can see a big, clean, beautiful washes, which I will try to help you develop if you're doing watercolor, where you can learn how to put the light in and mix color on the paper, and you'll get those subtle textures in your paint. And then I used volume. I create volume in shapes, and I'll be teaching how to do that, which really gives you a nice piece.
I think it's really important to learn how to use those washes, and especially I having to keep the white and keep the light.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that you specialize in, isn't it?
Yes, good. This is an award-winning, multi-award-winning piece in acrylic called Inventory Pickup. And so we have a big white shape and a very active colors in the red shapes and the green. So you have complementary colors with some accenting and the strong value contrast. It was very successful, but it was fun to paint. And I just, you can see that the gas tank behind is much duller than the pickup. So you can see how you can take a white and make it more dramatic and come forward being pure and colorful in the background and sit back. So we'll be learning how to create depth with color and to vary the colors. If you look at the red in the buildings and the back there, each one is a little different, and I'll be showing you how to change your color. If you look at the greens, you see the same thing. So that makes it glow in your palette. Even though you have contrast, you can also have glowing color.
And color is really a large part of what you're working with as well. You're doing the color balance with the washes and things, right?
Yes, people tell me they're just drawn to my color, and I hope to help you. I think it's really good to have, if you learn color, to learn from somebody who loves it and understands it. And they didn't even make me take color in college. They said, you got it, you don't need this class. But I have learned considerable things from my mentors and that I can pass on to you. This is the birch tree, and you can see this is a cylinder shape of the birch, and I'm pulling the shadows and changing them as they go down the trees. And I mix the background into the subject matter. I connect it. And that's a big thing that I teach because it keeps your painting flowing, your eye flowing, and you don't want to stop the eye movement. When the viewer is looking at your painting, you want them to travel through it and enjoy different areas. And some places you want them to stop, where you pop a dark against the light. Mm-hmm.
This is one of my favorite subjects. I love those trees.
Thank you. And this is another fun one. This is where we took a color and then I added white to a color. So I took turquoise and a red, and I changed it from the very beginning, and I used that with some other colors. And this also has a grid under it. It's hard to see with my face over it.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to decide.
But you can see in the water how fun that is to paint over that and then do the reflections. And you can see the different whites and the different, you see clusters of color. So the yellow is changing from dull to bright to more intense. I work at all those things, and I'll help you see how to do that.
So that's the same grid work that you were talking about earlier.
Yes. Okay. But this is a fun piece. And here is a one with communication between the subject matter. So you have eye contact with the girl and the horse. The one horse is looking in, trying to get her attention, and the gal and the other horse, you can feel that they're looking and talking to each other. There's similar colors overall, but you can see how the background pops the horse. One of my favorite parts was the tail flowing across, and I did some lifting in there. So I do lifts and remove paint, and I layer a lot. Like if you look at the jeans, there's a lot of layers in the paint. I know this is small on my screen, but you can see that there's some yellow to make it look like the dirty jean in the light, and then the cool purples. But I keep changing those colors and in the shadow. So I keep mixing in watercolor. I mix on the paper, so I get that glow in the flow of the paint.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
No, I love that.
This is a fun one with the mother duck. I couldn't believe it. She took these ducks out into the big lake, these little babies, and she was headed there. And then we came back and we started going out in the lake with them. and there were boats and waves, and they're so little, and they're following her. And I did this with gouache. Now, if you look at the background, this is again, the background is making this painting work. You see the varied greens and the rhythm. And so we talk about rhythm a lot. And if you look at how the little heads, they're all repeated. They're not very focused, but they are changing or connected some way between a color and the changing water. So those things are working together.
Okay, is that, I think that might be the, oh, no, there's another picture here.
And this is the hydrangeas. I did this in a workshop first, and I showed.
I just lost it.
Okay. There's one more, it looks like, after that too. We did a curved grid versus a straight line grid. And you can see like up at the top where that above the pink flower, there's that unusual shape going up there with the leaves breaking up to the right there. In that background, that's using the grid and just painting around shapes. So you find places to move the eye with the grid, and it breaks up the bigger shapes. And I concentrate on teaching you how to do spheres and leaves. A lot of people work so hard on the flowers and they don't pay attention to the leaves, and it tears your painting apart. So if we're doing flowers, we can develop some of those skills. I paint a lot of flowers.
So we'll be doing a lot of technique stuff as well in this group to learn to improve our techniques.
Mm-hmm. And here is a piece I did where I drew a black and white, and so when I painted the white shapes, you can see how I changed the color. So I concentrated again on that, mixing the color on the paper and changing it to color it. So that's one big white shape, but you have contrast, but then you have the greens, and the greens are changing in color again. And a lot of them have the complements mixed in, especially on the left, you can see the reds going into the greens and dulling them down and some coming forward. So you can see shapes connecting. And then the bright yellow buds are also green. And that makes, a lot of people have trouble with the green because it can all look the same pretty much in your photographs if you're looking at them. And we work at seeing ways to bring that out and change the color.
Okay.
But
awesome.
Overall, I really enjoy helping the students and talking to them about their work. And we have critiques, and my students all shiver at first when they say you're going to have a critique. And then they tell me how much they like them. They say that it's so helpful and it's fun, and I'm not a mean critiquer, but I do show you things that can help you. And we have a good time. I really think people end up giggling. I remember one time we had this gal had painted this little pink chicken, and then below it she had painted this huge flower. And I said, "What kind of looks like that flower is thinking about that chicken? What's that chicken doing there?" And we all cracked up, and it was not even a painting. It was just ridiculous. But we have a good time in my classes.
Nice. So what are some of your goals in art?
My goals are continuing. I keep going back to subjects again. That's what I call an ongoing series. And I try stuff. And so I know they tell you to have a series, and that really does help you develop because you have to come up with a new way to be creative and try it a little different. And it can get really tiresome. But I don't really, or it can really get you creative. But the thing is, who gets tired is your client. So I'm telling you, I can go back and keep learning. And I learn something different on each painting. And then I say, well, this is interesting. And I'll try that on this subject. And so I keep building on my art with that. And my clients don't get bored because the first show I had, I couldn't paint trees. And I thought every time I put a tree in a painting, I wrecked it. And so I decided to study trees. And I had this big show with 23 tree paintings, and most of them were green. And we were trying to frame them so they looked a little different. And then, I sold a couple. It looked like, and I realized not everybody wants a green tree painting. And so I had nothing else for anybody else who wasn't looking for that. So I have some simple tips on helping you move your work around that way that might help you also.
And you have some tips on clients and what clients want, and the colors that seem to be more appreciated as well. So one of the things that you just said was that you start using a method, but then you incorporate it into other things. And one of the things that you do is the grid. So why do you use the grid sometimes? That's one of your specialties.
Yeah, and the grid has been around forever. I didn't create this. It's just a way of breaking up the space. And originally, it was taught as like if you wanted to put a straight up and down grid to draw something out, you could copy the shapes into those squares. That's where I first learned it. And then we learned just breaking it up. But what really happens is it takes the control away from you, because you can plan out paintings and then all of a sudden you're so into this exact thing, it kind of takes away your creativity. And so here, all of a sudden you have something thrown at you that you have to work in. And it's been amazing because parts of it, I will totally destroy the grid sometimes. I know I had a piece with horses that I scrubbed out parts of the grid and it won a national award, but I used that to work the painting. But it does, I do different underpaintings also, but we can put these things in and, find surprises. And sometimes they're just so delightful, you can't even believe it. And if you don't like them, then you have to blend them in and make them disappear. And, but it also gets you using all the space on your page. A lot of people, when they're so into a subject, it helps you connect to your background, which is, to me, a really important way to get your whole piece to work.
And to be clear, we are not talking about a drawing grid that you use to draw your thing. I'm talking about a painted grid on the back that you are using to move it together.
Yes, I'm see if I have one in this book here. My book, Progressive Painting, has it. You can kind of see it in here, where I put a grid around on the paper and I balance it. So I'm balancing the shapes, and then I draw my painting over it that I've sketched out, and then I just have to work. I paint on it like it's not there, and then I start working it together. And it's
so your grid is the underpainting, really.
Yes.
And it enhances the rhythm of the work then.
Yes, it's why music and art are so related is with rhythm, and I really work on getting the rhythm in the painting, and because that's where the boredom comes in. So if you have to keep painting, a lot of times in college they made us paint like a corn cob or something really difficult is like a picket fence, and you have to keep painting that picket fence, and you learn how to paint it. And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And you're like, when am I going to stop? And it gets worse because you're doing it again. But instead, you can change that rhythm and have a really weird way that you'll never forget how to do that I will teach you in my workshop.
So it gives you really a bit of unsuspected and a bit of unknown in the subject that adds interest to them.
Yeah, and it adds a magical thing. Right now I'm drawing out a bunch of trees in a field with beans that are dried in the fall, and the whole thing is about rhythm because you have repeated trees, but then you have these windrows of beans, and then the shadows from the trees go across them and bump across. And it's difficult to draw that, but um, it'll be a hard painting, but it's also simple. But I'm going to work on the whole thing is how is the rhythm of that? Is that exciting with the shadows going across?
So, what is your specialty?
Well, my specialty is color and texture. I'm called a neo-impressionist, which means new impressionism. And when I first started painting, I found I like a flat brush because I like using that to cover so I don't get too busy. And then when I use the flat brush, I learned I didn't want, I've seen people, it looks like they use a flat brush through the whole painting, and I don't want it to look like that. So I use it like a calligraphy pen, and I turn and twist it, and I try not to make you aware of the brush, but it's created this pattern of me using the brush that became very stylistic and very recognizable. And so that's what's new about my work. I have calligraphic shapes, I call them. And but the brushwork is apparent in the pieces. In the watercolors, it's more blended, but those shapes come through in the blended areas.
Okay.
But
And what do you hope that your students will learn from your mentorship?
I hope that they will learn to make their paintings as a whole, see new ways to connect things, to build the structure in their work and make it what they want. I just want to work with them, what they're doing, and it'll be fun to see. I notice things in people. Sometimes I see they need to work bigger. Sometimes they should work smaller. I look at what they've been doing, and it's really it's all about you. And I mean, I'll learn a lot from you, and I'm happy about that. But I will be looking at what you're doing more than what I'm doing.
Okay, so what do you think the advantage of a mentorship with you is versus taking a workshop?
Well, this is more personal, and it's more about your work and building on it. So we'll try to look at the whole thing. We'll look at what the group is working on. We'll have a goal. I I can write lesson plans like you've never seen. So I can look at this group and see what I think would be beneficial, and I'll direct our lessons that way. But we still will be looking at your work. I won't be asking you to change your work, and you can try things like the grid. And I might have some exercises if I see problems in areas. I might, if I see a lot of people having a problem with something, we might just do something that would help you understand that better overall.
And it's a small group, so people get a lot more attention. And with the mentorship, you are gearing it already towards where they're at and what they want, as opposed to a workshop where you have just a set curriculum.
Right. Yeah. I will have a demo. I love demoing, and you can ask for demos. You can ask for specific demos. And I will show you how, if I sometimes demo, how I would approach something on your piece if you want, different things like that. Um, so it's, I just look at one painting at a time. I'll try to help you my best. But I've been painting since I was 12, and I've been a professional for almost 40 years. And I have a good success level as an artist in business. People buy all my paintings, and I have, I know about business. I might be able to help you if you have questions on that too.
Awesome. How do you get in the mood to paint? What happens when you're trying not to approach something or you're not in the mood?
Well, that was a good one. I asked my high school art teacher, who is famous, Rose Eden, and she's internationally known, that question. And she looked at me and she said, Ellen, I'm going to tell you this once. You don't wait till you're in the mood to paint. You start painting and get in the mood. And so I do have tricks though. I have things like, have you been painting one day and it's just amazing and you're so excited. Everything you touch is like gold. And you're like, wow, that is so fun. I want to keep painting. Next day, everything you touch is destroyed. And you're like, ah, what did I do? It's so depressing and frightening. So I have some techniques, and even in my book, it outlines many of them that will help you get in the zone. I mean, like if it's too hard, you're not going to be in the zone. If it's too easy, you're going to be bored. So you got to get somewhere in the middle. And, you know, you can break things down to make them more easier to do, but
they're more approachable if you have things broken down. Do you journal?
I do journal. I have, I used to keep them all in one in a notebook, and I don't do this to have anybody find, but I used to, some days I'm like emotionally worked up about something. Not so much now that I'm older, but a lot more when I was younger. And I'd get all worked up about something about my kids or something. And I would write it out in that journal. And then I would say, oh, that's not that big a deal when I see it written out. And then I could paint because I wasn't there. And then the other is my favorite thing to do is like I like to sit on the floor. I've just had my lunch. I take a nap because I like to paint mostly in the afternoon. And I take a 15-minute nap. I have my coffee and I put 6 pieces out and I look at them and I write down what I like about them. And I'm really kind to myself. I don't beat myself up and say that's horrible. I write down what I like and what can I do. And for example, I did a piece. I had one up with a window and some flowers, and I looked at it, I had no idea where to start next. So I just said, I'll just work on the whites on this. And see, in watercolor in particular, oh no, I forgot to turn my phone off. I'll do that. In watercolor, I just worked on this piece. I said I will work on the whites, and I did that. And then when I did the whites, I could see what else to do, and then I finished the piece. But I didn't say I had to finish the whole painting. So I'm just breaking it down into a part that I can do. And you can wreck watercolors because you want to keep painting. That's why I work. Maybe I have 6 going. So if I get into something I'm excited about and it needs to dry, I shall set it down and get out of there. So it just sets up. That watercolor paint doesn't want to be bothered, and that's the easiest way to wreck one. So
patience is really important with watercolor then.
Yeah. So it's just, if you get a group, like I get a group of paintings going, and then I kind of work on parts of them. So and I might not know what to do all 6, or I might write down about 3 of them, what I'll do. But that journaling kind of gives me my work for the day.
Can you tell us a bit about open and closed shapes? I saw something about that in your book.
Oh yeah, boy, that was something that took me a long time to get. This is when I didn't even get it in college. I got it when I saw an artist who did it so well, and it finally made sense to me because they talked about an open shape and a closed shape. And this is all about eye movement patterns. An open shape is a shape, 2 things side by side could be of the same value. They could be a different color, but they're the same value, and your eye can move through them. So that's one way you can connect things. The closed shape is a dark shape against a light shape. So you will it'll stop you, and you can make things pop out. And you need to think about when you're going around something, if you want it to flow into the background or if you want it to stand out. And those are, it's an extremely powerful tool. Just like your edges, we'll be working on edges. Edges are significant, and there's a part around the shape, something overlaps or it separates, and there's tension. So we look at all that.
So you'll be able to, when you're looking at people's work, and whether I say critique or help people where they're stuck, you'll be able to look at their shapes and help them understand where their eye movement goes and what kinds of things they can do to improve the whatever it is that you see in the composition.
Yeah, well, we do planning, and you plan the eye movement first. You get you plan, let's say if there's two things like that horse and that girl looking together, you arrange how far apart they have to be to get that to look like they're connected. Then you put those on the page, and then you put other things on the page. You move them around, and then you draw the edges of your paper around that before you ever put it on a canvas or a watercolor paper, because then you can make that space fit your subject. Like I say, backgrounds are tough. Put something smack dab in the middle of the page, you've given yourself a background nightmare. So you can use your edges of your paper, the sides of where you can invite people to come in from the edge and flow through your painting. So that's where we start.
So what makes art that sells?
Art that sells, well, it's very interesting things about selling. Like I do have subjects that sell really well. However, if I do too much of anything, it's like they quit selling. So I remember this gal had these, how do you paint a purple cow? And she put one up and it sold. And then she put another purple cow up and it sold. And they were beautiful. And she thought, well, they're selling so good. And she put 4 up and then none of them sold. And I've seen this happen with me if I get too many of something. If I have a lot of florals and no landscapes, and the landscapes sell. So varying your sizes, varying your colors, varying the shapes of your paintings, having that variety for people are some key tips. But what makes painting sell? I think a lot of people tell me it's the color. They love the color. A lot of people are into color. A lot of people these days are also into black and white. So you'll see that. But I do pay attention a little to trends and have a few in the new trend color usually. But just getting that personal feeling to get them to come in and look at your painting as a goal, and then you can.
So you try to have a goal for each painting.
I have the goal is to make the painting what I want, and I something I'm very interested in that, and I put love into it, and love is not fear. So we talk about fear and how destructive it is, and how it's kind of like when you putt. If you're scared, you shake, and then you hit the ball off to the side or something. You need that sureness, and we talk about working with that. I have some methods.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Ellen? I see people out there, but most of the microphones are off. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Is there anything else that you want to
here's
tell?
one.
Oh,
hi.
Sorry, I don't hear you. Can you type it in the chat? That's too bad, I guess. How much of the class will be watercolor versus acrylic?
Can you indicate if you like? We can do either media, or you could work on, you know, what I thought I would do is work with the dominant media that people are working with. So, or go back and forth. I'm not, but if we have a lot of watercolors, I can make it watercolor or acrylic.
I think that we talked about the fact that because Ellen does both, and some of her techniques work well in both because she does a lot of the layering and things, that she will be able to teach and we will be able to apply it to both mediums. But it depends on the who's in the group as to, you know, if the dominant, what people want in the group. If there's a lot of people who are just doing acrylics, if we have no watercolorists, then we obviously would focus on the acrylics. But when I went to Ellen's studio in Rancho Mirage because it's not that far from where I am right now. And she was showing me her work and showing me how she uses a lot of the same techniques with the transparency and things in both mediums.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Well, I'll be here for you. We might start with a small group, and if it's a small group, it's all the better for you. So it's all about you. And I'm not a new teacher. I have lots of students that come back to me over and over. And so I would hope that you would love the class.
So do you have any warm-up exercises or prep that you do before you start each day?
I do warm-up exercises. I often take a watercolor, let's say for watercolor or acrylic, but I take a little sheet and I'll hold the photo and I don't draw anything. And it forces me to concentrate really hard, which it takes a lot of concentration. And I don't think about anything. And I have these, I'll go through that with you because there's some tricks to that to get that concentration. And when I just do one layer. I don't try to make a painting. And it's only for me. And I learned this when I had a period where I was wrecking everything. It was so depressing and I couldn't make my paintings turn out. And I called this teacher and I told her, I can't paint anymore. I don't know what happened to me. And I was just horrified. And she said, do some little paintings, Ellen. Just go out and paint something from life and do a little painting. And I go out there and I do a little painting and it was looking really good. I said, oh, well, maybe I should do a little more on this. And then I tried to make it turn into a cellar and then I'd wreck it. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I said, well, okay, Ellen, these paintings are just for me. And that's the way I treat my drawing pad. I know I see people with these beautiful drawing pads and I envy how gorgeous they are. But I do my sketches for me. They help me do my work. And I don't do sketches to sell. I mean, they are my warm-ups. I don't care what they look like to anybody else. And anything like that is thinking about what other people are thinking is very destructive at that point. You just want to concentrate and be there. Like you're in touch with your subject, you're seeing it and you're going slow because you didn't draw it out. So you really concentrate and you just do this one layer. And then when I come back the next day, you know, I can paint, then I'll go to paint. But and I have my drawing done. I have my drawing ready before I do this warm up because I found that if I really get excited, which we do, we get so excited and you want to get a painting done. You don't have to do that in one day. You don't have to go and you should give it a break and go look at it again. Because like I know I did these horses I got in a book called Best of Watercolor. And the best watercolors in the country today. That was in 1995. And I drew the horses out and I thought, oh boy, it's so good. You better come, you better wait. You come back and look because if there's any distortion, it doesn't matter how beautifully you paint it, it's gonna look wrong. So came back, oh yeah, here's something else. So I did that again. And then I corrected that and I thought, well, you really want it's a big piece. Wait another day. Next day, there's just a little thing. So then I did the warm up and then I started painting. I don't remember painting. I remember having fun and I was totally there because I had warmed up and I trusted my sketch. So the total trust of that sketch means I don't have to worry that I have something in the wrong place. I'm not worried about that. I'm just playing with the paint, which is, I love paint. So there I am and painting away. And it was magical. It had an underpainting. I know there was this white, I don't know, blaze going down the front of this horse. And I took and I erased out and it looked like it was fuzzy, like his blaze instead of just plain white. And I mean, it was just things like that.
So you can apply texture in that way too. So it sounds to me like your warm-up exercises kind of help you get into your right brain.
Yes, but they also get you into the speed. I think sometimes we have all this pressure to get in a contest, get this piece done, you got to get it to this show, whatever. And then you start thinking about you have to hurry up. And you can paint fast. Nothing wrong with painting fast. You just have to be there when you're painting and not worrying about other things like that. Like
yeah. Everything outside that's influencing your mind, so you can't.
Yeah, like don't turn. You put the laundry on. Yeah, oh, the dryer's done. No, that's really bad. I forgot to call my mother. No.
Focus time. Focus, focus, focus.
Yes.
Awesome. So does anyone else have any questions? Ellen, do you have something that you want to maybe say just to close this up?
Well, I really welcome you to trust me. I know you don't know me, and I hope you like my work, but it's not about my work, it's about your work. But I do have students have told me that I give them suggestions and it works for them, and they're really glad they listen. And I would hope that I could help you. So that would be my goal, to help you in my mentorship. So I hope to see you in a class.
Thanks for attending.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and we hope we see you there.